good morning from Vietnam. Good afternoon to you. Today is one day before Thanksgiving in Vietnam time, so it's 2 days before Thanksgiving to you. But I want to say Happy Thanksgiving to you and to your family in advance.
Thank you, Han. I understand that you celebrate Thanksgiving as well for your family in Vietnam. So happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate you spend time joining our show and share your stories with our global audience. It's important for us to be connected so that we can share and learn from one another. It's very beautiful of you doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for creating the space to do so.
And Carl, you've been to our country back in 2010, and the country has changed a lot over the past 12, 13 years. So if now you have a new friend, new family, if you decided to come back to this part of the world, you have a new friend to visit. So please, accept our invitation in advance.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I definitely don't need an excuse to come back to your beautiful country, but now there's even more of a reason to do so. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And of course, same holds true for whenever you come to visit the United States and the West Coast in California.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have good friends over there. I definitely we pay San Francisco a visit. The next trip I'll travel there, and a shout out to you. It would be wonderful
Absolutely.
and have a cup of coffee together.
I'd love to meet up live,
Yep.
in IRL, in real life. Yes.
And since you have been to our country already, you know our culture a little bit back then. That it's very honor for our audience if we can have you to share a little bit about who you are and the works that you do. Could you please do that for us?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for asking. So, my name is Karl Hebenstreit. It's actually Robert Karl Hebenstreit. I go by my middle name, which is Karl. And the interesting thing is that even though my name is very, very Germanic, I'm only a quarter German. I'm actually more Greek than anything else because my mom is full Greek from Greece. She was raised in Greece. I was raised in Greece. Even though I was born in the United States, we went back to Greece and I was raised there. So my grandparents, I like to joke and say that my grandparents are lesbian, both of them, because they're from the island of Lesbos, the real island of Lesbos. So both my grandfather and my grandmother are lesbian because they hail from that island. And my dad is American with a German and Scottish background, which explains the name. And I'm an only child, raised both in Greece and in the United States. And I think one of the earliest memories that I've been reminded of and told of is when my mom asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And this was, of course, probably when I was around 4 or 5 years old. And I told her I wanted to be a clown. And she said, "Why do you want to be a clown?" And I said, "Because I want to make people happy." Now, of course, this was way before all the horror movies came out featuring the clowns that are in the gutters of the streets and trying to lure, people with balloons and everything like that. So that was way before then. And I never became a clown. I'm probably clownish in some of my personality, but I definitely do continue to want to make people happy. I think that is the role that I fulfill. And one of the ways that I've really dove into to do this is to help people better understand themselves and other people that are important to them so that they have better relationships, and in that being happier, having happier lives, to learn, especially through the Enneagram model, to help teach them the Enneagram model to do this, to help them have happier lives because they understand themselves and the rest of the world even better.
Wow. Carl, you have a phenomenal journey and you share with us in about 2 minutes time, and that's not fair for our audience. So we're gonna explore the journey all together. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
All righty.
All right.
Okay. So when I was little, I wanted to become an astronaut, and then jumping in different planets seems so cool, right? And then you mentioned that when you were 4 and 5, you told your mom that you want to bring happiness to people, and being a clown is the thing that you wanted to become. So at 4 and 5 years old, we have so many things in our mind. The world is, is so beautiful, full of, a lot of things, right? So why back then that you you wanted to bring happiness to others. It's a mission that you want to share your news.
That's a great question. I just, so part of, if you wanted to look at Enneagram theory, it's you're born with your predisposition to your type. And my type is type 2. I lead with type 2, which is the helper or giver. And I think that probably was if I look at it, it's a result of the environment. Of course, you're born with your type, but your environment brings it out. It supports nurturing it and creating it and solidifying it as your strategy of dealing with the world. And as an only child, an only grandchild, I was doted on. I definitely had a lot of love, and I saw the importance of love. I saw that others didn't necessarily get as much attention and love as they could because they were in different circumstances. But I definitely felt the love and the nurturing of my grandparents and my parents in different ways. My parents weren't always around because my parents both worked, but my grandparents raised me, and then my parents, of course, were around in the evenings and the weekends. So I was constantly surrounded by that nurturing and support and love. So I saw how important that was. And I felt bad for other children, other friends that I had that didn't necessarily get that. And I think I was taught from my upbringing, from my grandparents and parents, about sharing, the importance of sharing and the importance of being generous. The Greek culture is very much about that as well. So I think that's how that really got instilled in me, or supported, or really bolstered. And that's how that came about.
Beautiful, beautiful. And now what you are doing is to help people to realize their full potential, get into their best possible self. So basically, from 4 and 5 years old up until now, you've been living your life completely following the North Star that inside of you, right? And there's a lot of things happened along the way for that many years that could derail, you from the path that you wanted to become. So we wanna know how the journey took place from that, 4 or 5 years old all the way up here. Would you share with us a little bit?
Yeah, so as you're asking me these questions, it's also making me think about what did I do from the 4 or 5 years old up until now? A lot older than 4 or 5 years old now. And I remember stories where my parents would tell me that I was the entertainment. So when my dad was going, he was in Greece, he was with the Air Force, and he was also going for his master's degree. And there was a school that he attended there, and they took trips, school trips, obviously. They would go on excursions. And my dad and my mom were the only married couple that were part of this student group, and they were the only ones that had a child. So I was going along with them on these trips, and I would be made to be the entertainment on these bus trips. They'd have, when you've gone to Europe, you've seen that the buses have these microphones in the front. And so
Yes.
I just get the microphone, and I would be singing, I would be entertaining everyone by singing ABBA from beginning to end in order, whatever album was out then. So that was again, trying to bring joy to people and happiness to people. So I think that element of entertainment continues. I still sing choruses. And so I think that's still continued. And the journey itself, I didn't know what, obviously I didn't pursue any clown school or go anything like that. That wasn't something that I decided I needed to do. And I did take a lot of guidance from my parents. So they wanted me to go to complete college, complete college. And my mom, having been from a background in Greece, and she worked at the Swedish embassy, so she was part of the diplomatic area there. So she wanted me to pursue something to do with diplomacy. And my dad is very much into politics, so that was his idea as well. So languages, I'd already been learning French and obviously spoke Greek and English. So when you're in Greece and going to school in Greece, you take multiple languages there as well, just like the rest of the world. And it just made sense to look to see, okay, maybe I do take maybe political science as a major, and then also continue with French and see if that leads to something. But I wasn't doing that for myself. I was doing that because that was the idea that my parents knew. That was convenient and comfortable for them, and the direction, there was something to go towards. And then I took, because I couldn't just graduate by just taking courses in French and political science. You needed to take more credits in other areas as well. And I ended up stumbling into general psychology, just a regular general psychology course. And I was enthralled. I was so interested in that. That was so amazing to me to see that this is how you figure out how people tick, what's important to people, why they do the things that they do.
Oh.
And then I just kept taking more and more classes and ended up staying my very last semester, I ended up taking all courses in psychology, which then enabled me to get a triple major in psychology, French, and political science. And I decided that that's really what I wanted to pursue. I wanted to really, people spend so much time at work. Most of their lives are spent at work, sadly. And work carries through to their personal lives and affects their families and everything that goes on. So wouldn't it be great to see how can we make that work experience better? How could we make it more effective? How can we make the interpersonal dynamics better? How can we make people happier and more engaged at work? So there was one course that I took back then. It was called Industrial and Personnel Psychology. And it was Dr. Nora Rubinstein. I still remember her name. She taught it, and that just was amazing to me. It just opened my mind and my eyes to I never even knew that it was such a thing that you could apply psychology to the work setting. And I decided that that's what I really wanted to do. So I ended up going for my master's degree in human resource management. And then after that, did my PhD in organizational psychology. And that really helped to give me the foundation and the theoretical background, at least, in how to be able to make things better in the workplace, more effective relationships, more effective structure, more effective ways of working. And so that's really how the journey progressed. And yeah,
Beautiful.
from New Jersey to California. And that basically was the move from Greece to New Jersey to California during that time.
So starting with French and then go to political science. So and then you stumble into psychology, general psychology courses. And then you say that is the moment that changed in you when you first realizing, the love for psychology, right? So I want to bring you back into that moment when you first attending that class and you have the awakening moment of psychology. What really happened inside of you back then? Can you share with us?
It was almost like an enlightenment. I mean, yes, I enjoyed the French classes. I really enjoyed speaking the language and learning the language. And I love languages. I find them fascinating. They're a huge part of understanding a culture, a different culture. And I enjoyed that immensely. But a lot of it was, French literature. So how am I going to apply French literature to reality, to business reality or to work? And the political science was never a true passion of mine. I took the courses. There were some really, really interesting classes. One of them I remember was, there was a book that I remember reading in one, and that still stuck with me. I probably couldn't tell you the rest of the books that we read for that. There were a lot of books, but one of them was called Entertaining Ourselves to Death. And that was eye-opening for me because it was all about how we numb ourselves to the reality, what's going on through entertainment. Even the news is entertainment. It's created as entertainment. And it's really, we're being told what to think by other people, and we're being entertained by it. And we're looking forward to that entertainment. We are addicted to it. So anyway, that was an interesting class or book at least. And I didn't feel passionate about those majors until I stumbled into psychology, and that just understanding that people are different from the way that we see the world, how we feel about things. People feel differently, people think differently, people act in different ways, and just understanding that there are differences in that and that they're okay. That's perfect. That's all right. There's no reason there shouldn't be any change in that, and to understand it better. rather than vilify it or othering people and making people feel like they're others because they think differently or feel differently or act differently than we do. So just getting the full understanding of the full gamut of being human was eye-opening to me, because I never had models and ways of thinking about that to make it make sense. So that I think it was, to answer your question, it was just the passion came through. Like I just knew that this was what I wanted to do, what I was meant to do.
And Carl, a lot of people might have gone through that aha moment, you know, for them to realize that there's something meaningful to their lives. And then that aha moment will just last just short, and then move on with something else. But you decided to move on and get your PhD
Yeah.
in psychology, and that is not just money involvement, but it's also time involvement and everything. So a lot of commitment coming from your end. So it means that, you know, it's very dedicated from your ends to go all the way through. So tell us, why did you decide to all the way, you know, to the PhD?
I think it was to be able to make more impact. So
Mhm.
when I got my master's in human resource management, I was working in human resources. So I that was a very interesting discipline and field for me. So I learned all about the different parts of human resources, and I was very fortunate to be able to work in all the different aspects of human resources. Some of them appealed to me more than others, and the ones that truly appealed to me more were around leadership development and team development and seeing the organization improve and work better together and innovate better together. So how do we create the ideal conditions for that to happen? So
Mm.
some elements of human resources are a backbone for that to happen. They're foundational, and others really get into that. And the parts that get into that are more on the leadership development and organization development. So that's really what I wanted to dive into. So that's why I decided to go for the PhD in organizational psychology. I wanted to
Mm.
get more into those areas rather than just a generalist, an HR
Mm.
generalist, or now people and culture generalist.
Well, and then how your career took place, you know, during after the PhD program, can you share?
Yeah, so my career was an interesting trajectory, because when I graduated from college, it was the early 90s, 93. And the market for bachelor's degree holders in the liberal arts was not a hot market back then at all.
Mm.
So I found it very difficult having a bachelor's to try to get a job. And I was getting really low paying interviews for really low paying jobs. I'd have to commute. This was when I was in New Jersey, so I'd have to commute to New York for them. It just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And it wasn't in my area, in the area that I wanted to get into, which was human resources, which I
Mm.
decided was, after getting that psychology degree, that's really for the work and psychology together, be human resources. So during school, during the summers and the breaks, I would work through a temp agency. I would go to work for a temp agency. And I decided, if I'm not able to get a permanent job in this field, in this area, why don't I just try to get a temp job there? And then I knew people got converted from temporary to permanent whenever they proved themselves, if an opportunity existed. So that's exactly what I did. I went to my temp agency and I told them, please find me a role in a large organization that's headquartered here in New Jersey, because this was New Jersey at the time. And I'd love it to be in the human resources department, and
Oh.
a long-term job. And they came through for me because I'd worked through them. So they knew that I was reliable. I would perform well. I would be customer oriented. So they came through for me. They got me a job at Merck covering for maternity leave. So many, many months. And this was in the labor relations department. So my very, very first entry into human resources was being a specialist in covering for someone who went on a maternity leave in the
Mm.
labor relations department at Merck in their old headquarters in Rahway, New Jersey. And so I got in, the maternity leave was coming closer and closer to an end after a couple months. And I thought, well, what's next? I need to find my next role. So I went back to the temp agency and I said, okay, so I know that they've just built this big headquarters in White House Station, New Jersey for Merck. Is there anything there? Because that's where headquarters is now. Is there anything in other HR roles? And sure enough, they kept finding me. Like, I would basically go from one maternity leave right into another. So I covered for all these different maternity leaves, creating like a rotational program. Think of it like a human resources rotational program as a temp in all these different departments. I was an employee, so I started in labor relations, and I went into employee communications. There was human resource information systems. There was stock option administration. There was college recruiting. There was, oh boy, I can't even remember. I think there was probably one more in that. So for 2 years, I was covering for maternity leave after maternity leave and filling in and doing full-time work as a temporary employee working at Merck. So getting amazing work experience, and at night going to school for my master's degree.
Wow.
So in human resource management. So learning at night and applying during the day, applying the information and knowledge during the day. So that was an amazing experience. I did not end up getting hired by Merck because after 2 years, because of my master's degree, other organizations recruit people from this was Rutgers. So I went from my undergraduate to at Rutgers, and my graduate degrees from Rutgers as well. So other schools were recruiting graduates or people in the master's program from Rutgers into their organization. So I was recruited by Belcor. So I went to work for them for 2 years, and I was a recruiting and staffing manager for them for 2 years. And then AT&T, by that point, I think I finished my master's while I was at Belcor. I think that's right. And then AT&T hired me, and they're related companies, but they're not. They're somewhat related companies in the related industry. And AT&T hired me, and I went to their headquarters locations and worked for them in Morristown and primarily in Morristown, and then some Basking Ridge work. And then they ended up moving me to California for an opportunity, because I told them I just felt this draw, this pull to go to California. So I told them, if there's ever an opportunity that comes up, I'm volunteering to go to California for you. And sure enough, they had a huge voluntary retirement incentive program where thousands of people took it. They basically added years of service to their age and years to their age and years to their years of service, which allowed them to retire early and take a severance package. And they combined, I think there was 4 roles into one in Pleasanton, California. And I was offered that role, and I jumped at it and I took it. And that's how I came to California. And then that's where I started my PhD, because I realized I wanted to get more into that leadership development and organization development, not necessarily just the HR generalist work that I was already working in.
I was about to ask you the question. That question is, if so, what happened during the work that you feel that you realize that you want to dedicating your life and your works on helping people to find happiness at work? So
that's a great question. I probably seeing my friends and family members and their experiences at work, and the frustrations that they had, and the politics that they had to deal with, and the different personalities that didn't get along with each other. I think that probably played the biggest role for me to say, hold on, maybe there's something I can do here. Maybe there's some way I can help with this.
Beautiful, beautiful. So fast forward from there. So it's good for our audience to know what exactly Karl is doing at the moment. Can you share with us, please?
Well, yesterday and today would probably be anomalies, because I ended up going to 2 different groups today. I went to, this is Thanksgiving week, as you said. So they're doing these Thanksgiving week programs for children at the different organizations here. So yesterday I went to the Boys and Girls Club of Cathedral City, and I read my children's book to, there were 2 different sessions, probably about 30 or 40 different kids if you combine the 2 sessions. And then today it was almost 50 children at the YMCA of the desert. So I went there and I read the children's book to try to teach them, again, diversity and understanding that there are diverse ways of looking at the world, and we need to integrate them, not just separate them, not just vilify them or other them, but to actually build them and put them into our own perspectives. So that's something that I don't normally do, but that's what I did today and yesterday. But also today I had executive coaching sessions. So I do executive coaching, I do organization development consulting, I facilitate different workshops. I train people in using the Enneagram in organizations through an organization called Integrative Enneagram Solutions. So they have a very cool instrument that helps people identify what their Enneagram type is, and also work with that for coaching and development. So I train people in using that instrument and then going and being able to coach in that as well. So that
And
is
that is your
another
own
thing that I do.
company.
That is not my company. That's a different company. I work for them whenever I do that. But I do have my own company that I do executive coaching and organization development consulting. So it's, yeah, so I do team building with the Enneagram for my clients, as well as the clients of the other company I just mentioned. I also, I'll do projects for startups where they try to upskill their supervisors or new leaders to give them skills that they didn't have and how to be better leaders and be more effective leaders. So all sorts of different programs like that, just to improve organizations and their leadership and the employee experience within it.
Yeah. Since you talk about it, what is the best way for our audience, if any one of them want to reach out to you for helping their teams to get better?
Oh, thank you. So I have a website. It's a play on words. So we all have heard of form and function, but my company name is Perform and Function. So PERFORMANDFUNCTION.com. So that gets right to my website, and you'll see my bio on there. You'll see all the services that I perform through that company, Perform and Function, as well as links to my books, the business book. There's a business book called The How and Why, Taking Care of Business with the Enneagram, which is a great way of showing how you can use the Enneagram model for all aspects of organization development and leadership development. And an outgrowth of that book, because that book was originally written in 2016 or published in 2016. So an outgrowth of that book, which is 2 years now, I guess it's 2 years old, is the children's book, which is Nina and the Really, Really Tough Decision, which is a way of teaching children, which is what I was doing today and yesterday, that there are 9 ways of looking at the world. And we focus mostly on one of those 9, but wouldn't it be great to integrate those 8 other perspectives as well and realize that they're just as valid, just as good. There is no best way. They're all best. So just how to integrate them all together so we have a much better understanding of the world and people in the world.
Karl, I interviewed so many executives around the world, and there's 2 things that they normally share that they regret yet doing it. Okay. When one of them was to write their own book, and I always encourage them to write their books, to share their stories, because that is their unique stories that they can share to the world, right? So, and I bet that a lot of audience who listen to our program at the moment also have some sort of dream inside of themselves that one day they're gonna write their own book. So thanks a lot for writing your books. Let's dive into that part, okay? And Karl, since when you start having the inspirations to write your own book, though?
I never had an inspiration to write a book. That was never on my radar. It was never my intention. I started using I learned about the Enneagram when I was in my PhD program, and I started experimenting with it. I started reading all these books and looking at what had been written and coming up with connections and saying, hold on, you can use the Enneagram for this. Oh, it would make sense to use it for this. Oh, it's very similar, and it relates very well with this other model. So I started seeing the connections there, and I started seeing how much more in depth you could go with the Enneagram than with some of the other models, and started thinking, hold on a second, why do you need to learn all these other models when you can just learn this one and use it for everything? So then I started presenting what I was doing at different conferences all around the world. And I was working full time. I had completed my PhD by that point. and I was just presenting practical applications of how I was using this model in business, in everything that I was doing, because I was always working in human resources. So after one of these presentations, and this was in Canada, someone came up to me and said, "When's the book coming out?" And I looked at him and I said, "What book would that be?" So he said, "Well, these are all amazing concepts, and it would be great to have them all together in one place and reach a much broader audience. So when's the book coming out?" So that was the impetus. That was really the driver for me to say, okay, what would that look like? So because, just like you're saying, these other executives, they have the regret of not writing a book because it seems like such a daunting task. Like, I'm going to have to write a book. How do you start? So I thought about it and I said, hold on a second. Okay, I have all the content. The content exists because I have PowerPoint presentations, I have examples, I have case studies, I have all this content that I've been putting together and using on a daily basis at work. I have a thesis that I wrote for my PhD. That could be a chapter. Not the whole thesis, of course, but the summary could be a chapter and a little expanded. So I thought about each chapter could be a different application. Each chapter of the book could be a different application of the Enneagram in business. How do we apply the Enneagram in the business world? And that's how taking care of business with the Enneagram came to be. Each chapter was a different organization development intervention. So the book just wrote itself. It really did write itself. I just put everything together. I decided to self-publish because I figured this is such a niche book. No publisher is gonna say, yes, let's jump on this and take a gamble or take a risk on it. So I self-published in 2016 during COVID. Just like you, I decided let's update it. Because there were some updates. There were new studies, there were new examples, there were new case studies that I could put in there, more research that had come about. So I updated, I refreshed it. And then just recently now, this year, I did a third edition, which includes a hardcover option now. And it's all color. The interior is all color. So it makes it pop more. It makes things make sense because there were some things that needed to be in color so you could see where the lines and the arrows went. So this is a much, it's the ideal version of the book so far. I don't know if there's going to be a fourth edition, but I'm really happy with the third edition.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
congratulations. But it's been 7 years already since the first version is published, right? And
yes.
yeah, so for for a lot of us who haven't read about it, or for myself not knowing the Enneagram, what it is and stuff. So you're an expert in that. You have your PhD thesis on that. You wrote a book, and you travel the world and do the conference sharing about that and how it implements into personal and the business concept. Would you share with us, what is your book about?
Yeah. So it's basically using the Enneagram as a model and construct for helping to understand ourselves. First of all, we start with ourselves. So it's building emotional intelligence, really. So we are self-aware. So we find out about what our own motivation has been for our entire lives and will continue to be for our entire lives. And then realize that there are 8 other energies, 8 other points that we can draw from, which we maybe have not been. We've been ignoring them. We've been not focusing on them at all because what has worked for us, or what worked for us in our early childhood, was this one tactic or strategy, and we've just carried it on for our entire lives. And a lot of models really focus on that as well. Leadership Circle is really much about that. Myers-Briggs shows that we have these predispositions, and later on in life, hopefully they do flip because we realize that they can't be successful using those the entire time in every single situation. And that's really what it is. It's we need to figure out, how do we not stay fixated in that one core type that had worked well for us for a certain amount of time in our childhood, and adopt the other 9, integrate the other 8, the other 8 styles, all 9 of them, into our own being, so that we can choose appropriately for whatever the situation calls for. So we're not necessarily choosing our strength, Because if we choose our strength in an area that's not appropriate, that becomes a weakness. So it's using that for all aspects of organization development interventions, in change management or change leadership, in conflict resolution, in communications, in team building, in leadership development, in executive coaching, in diversity, equity, inclusion and justice, in agility, in all the different aspects that are important and have come up in the business world, and all these other models they're competing for it. When the Enneagram can really be the one-stop shop that gives you insight into all these different things, all these different areas.
So
that's what the book
like,
calls out.
I understand. So your book is the practical one, so help people to understand themselves, and then how they can leverage their strength and the weakness in circumstances, so they can fit with other people's personality and bring out the best result come out. So am I correct?
Exactly. It's not necessarily, it has an assumption or a presumption that the self-development is happening separately. This is the business application of it. So there's some self-development that is touched on, of course, in the executive coaching chapters. And we talk about 360s, we talk about self-awareness, and of course, applying all of the elements that you see in all the different chapters will help develop you as well. Now, one of the chapters is decision making, and also empowerment, and how you can use the Enneagram to help make the best decisions every single time. Because we usually have one decision making style, and we take some things in consideration, but we may not be thinking about everything. And this helps us think about every aspect. And that's where the children's book came from. The children's book is an outgrowth of just that chapter on decision making. And that, again, I was not writing a children's book. That was never part of my plan. And then a friend of mine co-wrote a children's book with his mother. His mother has multiple sclerosis. And they wrote this book together, and I saw and I thought about it, well, this is probably a much better audience to get to earlier, because wouldn't my life have been easier had I known about the Enneagram model earlier on in my childhood? And then things would have been much easier, much different, much clearer. I would have been a better person. So I thought, well, how could I introduce this concept to children so that, and no, it's not going to be, this is the Enneagram, and this is what this thing does, and this is what the type 2 is, and what the type 3 does. And it's not going to be that at all. But how could I introduce it to them so it makes sense? And so I decided I would use the decision-making chapter and childrenize it to make it make sense. So how do children make decisions? And so one child is then looking at the other 8 friends that she has and seeing the different ways that they look at the world and how they make decisions. And then she integrates that into her own worldview. So that's just the way to make it make sense.
Beautiful. Hey, Karl, I wrote a lot of notes in here, and one thing that I wrote a lot in here is intentional. Because your life, to me, you're very intentional in the whatever you do. Since 4 or 5 years old, you want to bring happiness to the world, to the people around you. You go into the world of psychology and all intentional into the PhD, so that you can, build a great foundation for you to start helping people. Be very intentional in making the work culture, help people find happiness at work. And some along the way, you have angel happen to come up to the stage and tell you when the book is written, right? And that's how you got intention and paid full attention onto writing this book. And I believe that those 2 books have something linked onto the 4 or 5 years old Karl's vision of bring happiness also. So the how and the why, and the book, and the second book, we help people to find the happiness inside of them, and so that they can be the best version, but also help other people to see the better side of everything that they do also. So if you could pick a chapter in the book, the how and why, and share with us the chapter that you love most besides the design, the decision making chapter. Okay,
Hmm.
what else that would be your best one, and how and why?
So there's one aspect of the decision making chapter, as because it carries through to empowerment. It carries through to, if you could have one checklist that you could have in front of you to intentionally address your day and everything that you do in the day, that's an outgrowth of that chapter, and I call it the Enneagram checklist. And it's 9 questions that are specifically related to the Enneagram that help you to see, like, how am I showing up in the world? Am I meeting, first of all, the needs of everyone around me? And then am I able to be the best person I can, because I'm drawing all these energies that some of them are untapped, some of them are I'm not paying attention to, but how can I pay more attention to those energies that are within me, that if I can bring out of myself, could make me an even better, fully integrated person. So that's I think that checklist in itself is really my favorite part, because it really ties everything together.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's been for a lot of people going into this life without having that checklist, Carl.
Mhm.
Checklist to see whether or not we are going in the right directions, or we need to make some adjustment or so. And so the thing that you just help us to remember and remind us how important it is. Like we need to have a checklist in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And the second word that I note a lot in here is the word decision making and thinking. You know, my wife and I, we've been on the quest for many years to look for a way that can help people to improve their ability to think. Because we believe that with so many noises and distraction
Yeah.
these days, our thinking capability has been diminishing, but not increasing.
Yes. Yeah.
And you help people to think better, to integrate a different type, and the other knowing how they think, how they works internally, and then knowing how the other eight types works, and how they can be integrated all together to help them think better and make better decisions, right? I
Yes.
want to ask for your own experience in here over the
Mhm.
years, Carl. How have you been improve your ability to think?
I think so. And I want to go back to say that you're absolutely right. You and your wife are absolutely right about identifying the thinking capacity, capabilities, strategies are somehow something's happened, and they're not being leveraged, they're not being tapped into, they're not being utilized well. And I consistently see, when I work with organizations, that successful leaders, or a successful leadership trait, is systems-wide thinking. Not just
Mm,
thinking about your own department or your own company or your own sliver of whatever, but it's, how does this work in this entire system? What's going on outside the system that's impacting it? So that's a, and critical thinking along with those lines too. So there's critical thinking that needs to happen. And some people are just about all the positive things that are going to happen, and some people are just preparing for all the negative things that are going to happen, and some people are just too busy collecting information about everything that they don't then move to a decision and action. So it's, how do
mm,
we balance all this stuff? How do we make it all fit together and work together in an integrated worldview that will help us to better understand the world and show up better in the world, so that we know that we are not missing out on anything, and that we're basically being inclusive. It's really about inclusivity of all the diverse different energies and powers and styles that exist, so that we can always show up at our best and be the best person that we can be.
mm. So
Yeah.
think about the system wide, and thinking systematically, and a system wide, how is affecting not only one division, but how the whole system be affecting under the change, right? So in terms of yourself over the years,
Mhm.
when you growing up, what practice, what way of doing that you've been applying so that you can help yourself, your own self, to think better every day, think better every day?
So the checklist is definitely a part of that. And
Mm.
let me just share that with you, because
Sure.
let me just give you some of the questions on there, because I think these are really, really helpful and would give an idea to your listeners and your audience about the power of the system. Okay, so the type 1 in the Enneagram system, the 1 energy is all around doing the right thing and being perfect all the time. And there are good things and bad things about that. There's healthy and unhealthy elements of that. So the question is, how or what is this the right thing to do for me, the team, the company? So does it support the mission? Is it the right thing to do according to our values? Is this the right thing to do, right? What is the right thing to do in this situation? The second question is, how or will it impact other areas? And if so, what are the repercussions on others, colleagues, stakeholders, customers? So now you're thinking about people. Now you're thinking about the downstream, like how is it going to affect people? A lot of people skip that step because they're always about the results or the task. The third question, so that pertained to point 2 on the Enneagram, which is the giver or the helper. So point 3, which is about the achiever, the results, one about all the results and the goals. How or does it support my or our goals? Is this the most efficient option? How will it affect the cost and budget? Right? So some people don't think about that, and some people, that's the only thing they think about. Point 4, which is the artistic, creative, really much about looking at the beauty and the artistry of the world and feelings and emotions. So does this present an opportunity to pursue patent protection, to be different, to be unique, have a niche? Does the solution bring a unique or special value, right? So point 5 is the observer, the analyst, all about the data and information. Is there data, research to support that this is the logical action to take? Point 6 is the loyal skeptic, is the one that's going to come up with the worst case scenario planning and really, really good at looking at all the things that could possibly go wrong and prepare for them. What are my backup plans if this fails? What are the consequences if this desired outcome isn't achieved or if we don't take any action? So it's not that they're throwing monkey wrenches into things, it's just that they want to prepare for them in case the bad thing happens so that they will be successful. Type 7 is the opposite. It's all about the positive things that can happen. That's the epicure or adventurer. How does this allow for growth in the future? What are other options? What are the likely positive outcomes? Right? Type 8 is about execution. It's the boss, it's the protector, it's the general, it's the director. How is this within my scope or our scope of authority or purview to control and execute? Because it may not be. It may be somebody else's monkey. Maybe it's somebody else's responsibility or area. So why are we even bothering to do it? Or should we be partnering with them to do it, right? Yeah. And the 9th point is, how does this fit within and affect the overall system? And is it sustainable? So if we really look and consider all these different 9 points in energy, and the 9th point is called the mediator or peacekeeper, keeping the peace, and really looking at the whole system together in a peaceful way, so that it all comes together in a peaceful way, integrated way. So if we really look at all these 9 perspectives or energies and how we show up, how we're developing ourselves, how we're not automatically responding to situations based on our wiring, because our core type will automatically dictate how we show up under stress and also how we show up under comfort or release. So if we don't fall victim to that, if we don't fall victim to those automatic connections, so when we start feeling, and this is a practice that I do too, when I feel, for me, it's a tightness in my chest as a heart type. The 2s, the 3s, and 4s are heart types. So I'll feel it here. When I start feeling that, I know something's wrong. I know I'm not controlling it. I know I'm letting something affect me. I know I'm not showing up at my best if I respond, because now I'm in a space of stress. So I'm not going to show up as my best self. So when we feel the trigger, when I feel the trigger, I know I need to control myself. I need to stop. I need to pause. I need to pick a different option. Because if I didn't pick a different option, I would automatically go to my stress point, which is the low side of the 0.8.
Yeah.
And that will not be pretty.
Well,
Yeah.
Farm, teach us, how can we realize that threshold so that get into the knowing stage that if we respond or we make our decision next, it's not going to be for anybody else good, not for our own good also. So a lot of us will let the core type, I noted here the core type leading to the next and the next and the next and the next, and
Yeah.
it got us all into the spiral downward, and it's not and create so many negative results.
Right.
So that knowing stage is very important. Now you earlier you shared that how you felt inside of you for you to starting to think differently, to not responding to,
Right.
and then what is that you can teach us so that for the listeners out there, when they get into that stage, they know
Yeah.
that they get to do something differently there.
So it's going to be something different for each person, but in
Mm.
general, the head types, the 5s, the 6s, and the 7s, the people that lead with that energy, that are from the observer, the data, the analyst person, or the loyal skeptic, or the Epicurean adventurer, they're going to get headaches. It's going to be a headache. And so when they feel a headache getting on, something's not right. There's a stress thing going on for them. And if they pay attention to that, because a lot of times, at least the different types, of course, will have different defense mechanisms to prevent them from from doing anything about it, and to be safe. But if you pay attention to what your body is telling you, your different center, and then do something differently, catch yourself, and then say, I'm not in control. I'm not in control right now. My body or my ego or my defense mechanism is controlling what I do next. And I need to stop and take a deep breath and consciously decide what is the right thing to do here, and not just automatically go into this pattern that has been my pattern for my entire life. So it's breaking that pattern and stopping ourselves from doing it. And then taking advantage of the other perspectives, all those other energies, all those questions that I just mentioned, right? Looking at the situation differently and saying, hold on a second, is this what's really going on? Or is this my ego playing tricks on me? So the head types, the thinking types, are going to get a headache. The heart types would probably feel a tightness in their chest.
Yeah.
And the gut types, the heart types are the helper or giver, which is the 2, the performer achiever, which is the 3, and the romantic or artist, which is the 4. So they're going to feel it in their heart. The gut types, the action types, are the 8s, the 9s, and the 1s. The 8s being the bosses or protectors or generals, the 9s being the mediators or peacekeepers, and the 1s being the perfectionists or reformers. They're generally going to get it they're going to feel something in their gut. They're going to feel sick to their stomach. They're going to feel a stomach ache. Something like that is going to be the trigger for it. So usually that will be your clue that something isn't right. And you're about to go into some automatic response that may not be the best response, and it may not be your best self coming through. So if people pay attention to that, if people become aware of that, and they may even experience it in any of those 3 different areas, right? Regardless of what their core type is, even if they don't know their type. If you feel a headache, if you feel your heart area, your chest getting tight, if you feel a stomach ache about something, pay attention to that. Something's not right. And you're responding automatically. You're not showing up as your best possible self. So stop, take a breath, pause, really think about what's going on in the situation, how to best respond. If you're not as self-aware and able to do that, or if you've been masking that or pushing that down, have someone who can see that in you. People can see that. Even if you don't feel, even if you can't see it in yourself, other people that know you, friends, colleagues, bosses, they see some change that happens to you, right? And so even if you're not as self-aware, other people are picking up on it, and they can stop you. They can say, hold on, is everything okay? Do you need a break? Do you need to step away from the situation? What is it, right? So I think that's the first part. The first part is making that stopping of that pattern.
Wow.
And then making a conscious effort of where do I go next? What's the most appropriate way to address this situation? And how do I show up as my best self?
Beautiful, beautiful. Since you mentioned about the importance of having somebody else in your life that can realize, can see, you know, how you feel and things like that. I'm just curious to know, you know, what is the type of people in your inner circle, Carl?
Yeah. Well, so it's been so my former boss at Genentech was the last company I worked for before I became independent 2 years ago, and she would be able to see it in my face. I could
Mm.
see it in her face too, by the way. Whenever she flushed red, I knew something was going on. I couldn't see that, you know, normally she would also be feeling it in her stomach at the time, but I could actually see the manifestation of it as the redness in her face. I had another boss where when her fixation came through, we were very close, and I was her HR manager. I was the HR manager supporting her group. And so when she would come in and be in her fixated state, she could see that I was responding to her fixation, and that would snap her out of it. She'd say, "Okay, I see, I get it. You're giving me the face that it's like." You know, she was a perfectionist, so she was asking for things that should have been able to be being done for sure had we had the right technology and the resources and the timing, but some of those things were not available or appropriate at that time. But we could do other things instead. We had workarounds. We just couldn't do that. And yeah, so yeah, she was right. Of course she was right. And we just needed a reality check, basically.
So how
But
do
yeah,
you,
so at work, because again, at work you're spending most of your life at work.
yeah.
So people can see it. Colleagues that are trusted can see it. You have friends at work that they can see it. They can pick up on these things even if you're not picking up on it yourself.
Mm.
And of course, at home, my partner will let me know. Of course, I'll let him know. So it's all these different triggers and things that we pick up on if we pay attention.
Absolutely. Carl, I believe that a lot of leaders out there have good intention, and
Right.
because of their good intention and because of their intelligence, then they got promoted into the role to manage and leading organizations, and maybe they need help to lead better. That so if how can we apply the Enneagram, or for them to apply the Enneagram onto their life and their work so that they can make a workplace a happy place for everybody?
Yeah. I think that the biggest obstacle for anyone is the preponderance of the golden rule. Everyone's has always been talking about the golden rule, and it's been instilled in us from religion, from upbringing, from school, from just and that's a good intention, and it's outdated and it's wrong, because the one thing that the golden rule assumes is that everyone is the same. And
Right.
everyone is not the same. Everyone does not have the same ideology, philosophy, background, heritage, uh, values, religion, politics. They're all different. They're all over the place. So if people go through life thinking, well, I'm going to treat people the way that I want to be treated, they're missing out, because that's what the golden rule says, right? But the reality is we need to treat people the way that they want to be treated, because they're different. They're most probably different than we are. They have different needs, different motivations, different drivers, different experiences, different whatever it is. And we don't know that. We don't know that unless we have a relationship. We have that relationship building, and we understand them and what their needs are and what their preferences are in communication, in recognition, in every aspect. They're not going to be the same as we are. That is blatantly obvious in succession planning. I've been in so many succession planning sessions where leaders have identified their successors and said, this person will be great, and this person would be great, and this is my successor. And then you ask them the question, did you ask them? Do they want to be your successor? Is this part of their plan?
Wow.
And the answer is no, right? So these people, when it comes time, and the person leaves and it's time for the succession to take place, the most obvious candidate is not the one that's selected. It's someone that's 2 or 3 down, because the obvious one did not want that job.
Mm.
They weren't interested. They were interested in something else. So it's not golden rule, it's platinum rule. Like,
Mm.
what do they want? What are their interests? What are their motivations? What are their drivers? What are their preferences? What are their likes? So I think that's the key for leaders. Leaders are promoted because most of the time for their expertise, in a certain industry, and a lot of times some are promoted because of their emotional intelligence, but they may not have the technical skills. But at a certain level, you may not need that as much. So just having both, though, having the technical expertise to be able to know what's going on in the business, and then having the emotional intelligence, the self-awareness, as well as the empathy for others' experiences. Now that's the platinum rule, knowing how people want to be treated. And then taking it a step further, I'm calling that the rhodium rule, where you do something with it. You integrate that into your own being, because maybe there's something in that perspective that you're not paying attention to that would help you be even better yourself.
Beautiful, beautiful. Carl, I have one last question. Okay. So we knew the past, we knew the little 4 or 5 years old Carl wanted to bring happiness to the world, being a clown and bring happiness to the world. But and then, now you bring happiness to help people to realize their full potential. That is the eternity of happiness, right? So they can be happy, and they can be happily helping other people to be happy also. So that
Exactly.
is very, yep. It's not fair if we're not talking about the future a little bit. Okay. So is there anything that you are working on that you are excited, you want to share with me and the audience so we can celebrate with you in advance?
Well, there are no more books coming out, or at least not that I know of, because I never. So you mentioned earlier that I have intention. Those were never my intention. My intention was to do what I'm doing, of course, but the output of that, the tools that would create that were never intentional. So that's opportunistic in a way. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Let's do that. Now's the readiness. It's really about being ready for it, being open to the universe to let you know, oh, this is what's needed now. I got it. Here it is. Here's a book. Got it. So I think that I want to make even more impact. I think that's my realization. I've had my business now for 2 years, my solopreneurship for Form and Function. And we have the 2 books out now, right? We have the How and Why, Taking Care of Business with the Enneagram. Now it's 3rd edition.
Yes.
And we have the children's book as well, which is Nina and the Really, Really Tough Decision. And it's also in Spanish and in Greek, and it's being translated into French as well. So my goal is to get this out into the world. I just want the world, just like doing the past 2 days where I've gone and read it to the children in Cathedral City and in Palm Desert here in Coachella Valley by Palm Springs. I want it to be magnified. I want it to be out there even more. I'm looking at doing more speaking engagements to make more people aware of it. Even if the children's book is read by a leader, that they don't have to go all the way with this. They could just get the main concept through here, and then the readiness will grow. So if a leader, everyone's a leader, can read this to their children, their grandchildren, their cousins, their nieces, their nephews, whoever, right? That knowledge that's being translated and transferred to the children is also being transferred to the reader of the book, to the children. So I'm just hopeful that the insights and the awareness of the Enneagram model are adopted by people and integrated into their own selves to create a better world. Ultimately, I mean, that's the vision for the future. Let's create a better world by understanding ourselves and everyone else better, so that we can hopefully create peace, which doesn't exist right now. How can we get there? And I think this is a way to get there. So it just needs to be magnified and amplified and just out there.
Beautiful.
So
beautiful.
That's the vision for the future.
Beautiful. Every leader was once a child, right? With dreams and visions and ambitions and stuff. So yes. So if you can instill, that Enneagram, the ability for them to think, to know about themselves, to know well for others, how best for them to make decisions that can bring the best outcome for everybody on the table, then you start building them become a better leaders already. And then those young leaders, when they grow up, they will never make wrong decisions because they know at the core of themselves what
Yeah.
is right to do things. So Carl, thanks a lot for doing that, and never say never, never say never. One day another angel will come to your life and touch your shoulder and say,
Another
hey,
book comes
when
out.
is the,
Oh,
yeah, when is the next book coming out? We never know, right?
don't ask me that question. You know what happens.
You know, when I travel to California next time, I'm not gonna be the one who tap on your shoulder and ask that. I'll make sure my daughter or my wife will tap on your shoulder and say, "Where's the next book coming out?"
Great, great,
Okay, my
lovely. I
friend.
look forward to that. If that's what
Yeah,
it takes for us to meet up, that's fantastic. Okay.
yeah, good, my friend. Thanks a lot for being so generous to spend your evening to join, yeah, late afternoon
Well,
and
thank
early
you.
evening to join and share your stories. I love the conversation, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as well. Thanks a
I
lot for
did. Thank
bring.
you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for bring your best to help people to be happy, and through your work consistently, intentionally, and now it's magnify. You're magnifying to the next level. I believe that the world is better if each of us is feeling better, doing things better. And thanks for leading that change. Okay.
And thank you for creating the platform to get these messages out.
Thank you very much.
Being the conduit for change. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Well, have early happy Thanksgiving to you and
Thank you
enjoy
as
the
well.
special holiday. I look forward to seeing you in Vietnam, or we coming
Yes,
to the US and I see you in person. That would be fantastic, my friend.
absolutely. Thank you, Han.
Thank you very much. Bye bye
Mhm.
for now.
Have a great rest of your day.
Yes, you too. Have a good night. Bye bye.
Mhm.